In the quiet halls of a Mississippi college dormitory, the stillness of the night was broken by the muffled sound of footsteps. The old clock in the corridor ticked away, marking the late hour. The dim light flickered, casting long shadows across the empty hallway. It was a night like any other, until it wasn't. Stacy Pannell, a student known for her vibrant energy and involvement in the college's parade marching band, lay in her room, unaware of the tragedy that was about to unfold. The dormitory, usually buzzing with the chatter and laughter of young college students, was eerily silent. As the clock struck 1:30 a.m., Emmy, Stacy's roommate, returned from a night out. She fumbled for her keys, only to realize they were missing. With a sense of unease, she knocked softly on their shared door, expecting Stacy to open it with her usual cheerful smile. But there was no response. Emmy waited, her heart pounding in the stillness. The silence was suffocating, and a sense of dread began to creep over her. She knocked again, louder this time, her calls for Stacy echoing down the empty corridor. Still, there was no answer. The minutes ticked by, each one stretching longer than the last. The dormitory, once a place of security and comfort, now felt like a labyrinth of shadows and uncertainties. Emmy's mind raced with worry, her imagination conjuring up 100 different scenarios, each more unsettling than the last. Finally, driven by a mix of concern and fear, Emmy decided to seek help from a neighbor. Together, they entered Stacy's room, only to be greeted by an unsettling darkness. The weak glow of a night lamp barely illuminated the scene before them, casting an ominous light on the bed where Stacy lay. As they moved closer, a chilling realization set in. The room, once filled with the laughter and energy of its occupant, was now a silent witness to an unspeakable horror. Stacy, the girl with the bright future and the infectious laugh, was no more. The night had claimed her, leaving behind a mystery that would shake the very foundations of the small college town. The echo of Emmy's scream pierced the night, marking the beginning of a case that would haunt the corridors of the dormitory for years to come. In the small town of Ripley, Mississippi, under the warm glow of a September sun, Stacy Pannell was born into a world brimming with small-town charms and community spirit. Her early years were marked by the innocent laughter of a child who found joy in the simplest of things. Stacy grew up surrounded by the love of her younger brother and sister. The trio was inseparable, their childhood filled with adventures and shared secrets. Their home was a haven of happiness, echoing with the sounds of playful banter and sibling camaraderie. As Stacy entered her teenage years, she blossomed into a lively and charismatic young woman. Her energy was infectious, and she quickly became a well-known figure in her high school. She wasn't just another face in the crowd. Stacy was a spark that lit up every room she entered. Her passion for life found a perfect outlet in the school's parade marching band. Stacy didn't just join the band, she became its heart and soul. With a decorative wooden rifle in hand, she would lead the band, her movements graceful and precise. Her performances were not just displays of skill, but expressions of her vibrant spirit. This zest for life carried over into her academic pursuits. When the time came to choose a college, Stacy set her sights on the Northeast Mississippi Community College in Boonville. Though it was a mere 30-minute drive from home, Stacy, ever eager for independence and new experiences, decided to live on campus. The dormitory was not just a place to stay. It was a new world to conquer, a new chapter to write in her already colorful story. Stacy's arrival at college was like a breath of fresh air. She quickly made friends, her dorm room becoming a hub of laughter and late-night conversations. Her enthusiasm for college life was palpable, and she wasted no time in joining the local parade band, eager to continue her passion. But as the leaves began to change color, signaling the arrival of autumn, a shadow loomed over Stacy's bright world. October 7, 1985, started like any other day, filled with classes, band practice, and the company of friends. Little did anyone know that it would be the last day of Stacy's life. As the sun set on that fateful day, casting long shadows across the college campus. The light in Stacy's eyes, which had brightened the lives of so many, was about to be extinguished in the most tragic of ways. The vibrant young woman, who had her whole life ahead of her, was about to become the center of a mystery that would send ripples through the heart of her community, leaving a void that could never be filled. October 7, 1985, dawned as a day of typical collegiate vibrancy at Northeast Mississippi Community College. Stacy Pannell, ever the social butterfly, buzzed through her day with her usual blend of cheer and energy. Her participation in the band practice was as spirited as always, her presence lifting the spirits of those around her. As evening cloaked the campus in shades of twilight, the air filled with the sounds of youthful excitement. A party was brewing, a common enough occurrence in college life, but this night was to be anything but ordinary. Stacy, her heart full of the simple joys of college life, decided to join the festivities. The party, held within the bounds of the campus, was a whirlwind of music, laughter, and the carefree chatter of students reveling in their youth. Stacy was in her element, moving among her friends, her laughter ringing clear and true. As the night progressed, she caught up with her boyfriend, sharing moments of quiet conversation amidst the revelry. The clock hands inched towards midnight, and the party began to wind down. The air was still warm with the remnants of the day's sun and the echoes of music and laughter. Stacy, accompanied by her friends, decided to return to her dormitory. The walk back was filled with the comfortable chatter of friends sharing their thoughts on the night's events. Upon reaching the dorm, the group lingered in the hallway, reluctant to end the night. The corridor was dimly lit, the light casting long, flickering shadows that danced across the walls. They talked, they laughed, and finally, one by one, they said their good nights, each retreating to their respective rooms. Stacy entered her room, the familiar confines offering a sense of solace and safety. The events of the evening swirled in her mind as she prepared for bed. In the quiet of her room, the excitement of the day slowly ebbed away, leaving behind a tranquil calm. With a sense of contentment, she settled into her bed, unaware that this was to be her last night in the world she knew and loved. Meanwhile, her roommate Emmy was still out, the night still young in her eyes. The hours ticked by, with the dormitory sinking deeper into the clutches of the night. Little did anyone know that the darkness was not just a cloak for the slumbering campus, but a shroud for a sinister turn of events that would soon unfold. As the clock neared 1:30, the night's eerie silence was about to be shattered, setting in motion a chain of events that would forever mar the memory of that autumn evening. The dormitory, once a beacon of youthful dreams and aspirations, was on the brink of becoming the backdrop for a nightmare that would haunt its halls for years to come. The early hours of October 8th crept in silently over the Northeast Mississippi Community College campus. The once lively atmosphere of the dormitory had settled into a deep quiet, with most students lost in the embrace of sleep. However, this stillness was about to be disrupted by a discovery so shocking it would forever change the fabric of the college community. Emmy, Stacy's roommate, finally returned from her night out, her mind still buzzing from the evening's excitement. She approached their shared room, expecting to find Stacy asleep. However, her key was missing, a minor inconvenience that quickly escalated into a spiraling nightmare. After several futile knocks on the door and no response from Stacy, a sense of unease began to gnaw at Emmy. In a growing state of alarm, Emmy sought help from Stephanie, a neighbor in the adjacent room. The two girls, bonded by their shared collegiate experiences, but unaware of the grim reality they were about to face, entered Stacy's room together. As they flicked on the light, a scene of horror greeted them. The room, a familiar haven of college memories and dreams, was transformed into a chilling tableau. There in the dim glow of the night lamp lay Stacy, motionless on her bed. The sight was surreal, a stark contrast to the vibrant, lively girl they knew. Emmy, driven by a mix of fear and hope, approached the bed, her heart pounding with trepidation. As she drew closer, a horrific sight unfolded before her eyes. Stacy's body was still, her once bright eyes closed in an eternal slumber. Blood stained the sheets, a silent testament to the violence that had occurred. The shock of the discovery sent Emmy reeling. Her screams pierced the night, a haunting echo that roused the dormitory from its peaceful slumber. Students and staff, jolted awake by the commotion, gathered in a mix of confusion and fear. The dormitory's security guard, responding to the cries for help, was the first to confirm the grim reality. Stacy Pannell, a beloved member of their community, was dead. The news spread like wildfire, a shockwave of disbelief and horror rippling through the once serene campus. As the first light of dawn began to filter through the windows, the police arrived, their presence a stark reminder of the tragedy that had unfolded. They were met with a scene that spoke of unspeakable violence, the peaceful dorm room now a silent witness to a heinous crime. The investigators began their grim task, piecing together the events of the night. The room bore the marks of a struggle, with blood spatter painting a gruesome picture. At the center of it all lay Stacy, her life cut short in the most tragic of circumstances. The discovery of Stacy's body marked the beginning of a complex investigation, one that would delve into the darkest corners of human nature. As the sun rose over the college campus, casting its light on the quiet building, the shadows of the night's events loomed large, a somber reminder of the fragility of life and the depths of human cruelty. The morning sun cast a pale light over the Northeast Mississippi Community College, but its warmth did little to dispel the cold dread that had settled over the campus. Detectives and forensic experts swarmed Stacy Pannell's dorm room, a hive of activity in stark contrast to the solemn stillness that hung in the air. As they combed through the scene, each clue added to the complexity of the puzzle. The centerpiece of this macabre tableau was the wooden rifle, a prop in Stacy's parade performances, now a suspected instrument of violence. It lay near her bed, wrapped in a towel, its surface stained with the grim evidence of the night's brutality. The detectives noted the peculiar positioning of the body and the room's disarray, signs of a struggle that ended in tragedy. The bloodstains on the bed and the floor told a silent story of struggle and suffering. Amidst the chaos, a pillow lay over Stacy's face, a haunting detail that raised more questions than answers. One of the most perplexing pieces of evidence was the mosquito net at the window, cut in a way that suggested an intruder's entry. However, the size of the cutout and its position presented a conundrum. It seemed too small and awkwardly placed for an adult to pass through, casting doubt on the theory of an outside assailant. Further complicating the investigation was the absence of any male DNA or evidence of sexual assault. The lack of defensive wounds on Stacy suggested she hadn't had a chance to fight back, or perhaps the perpetrator was someone she knew and trusted. As the detectives pieced together the timeline of the events, they faced a myriad of conflicting theories. Was the killer an outsider who had cunningly infiltrated the dormitory, or was it someone from within, familiar with the surroundings and its occupants? The absence of fingerprints or any other identifying marks added to the mystery. It was as if the perpetrator had vanished into thin air, leaving behind a trail of questions and few answers. The cut mosquito net, the wooden rifle, the pillow over the face, each clue seemed to lead to a dead end. In the following days, the campus was enveloped in a palpable sense of fear and uncertainty. Students and faculty alike struggled to come to terms with the brutal reality of Stacy's death. The once vibrant college had become a place of mourning, its walls echoing with the unspoken questions and fears of its inhabitants. As the investigation trudged on, the detectives knew they were not just battling against the cunning of a killer, but also against time. With each passing day, the trail grew colder, and the hope of unraveling the mystery of Stacy Pannell's death seemed more distant. The case was quickly becoming not just a quest for justice, but a haunting journey into the heart of an enigmatic crime. In the wake of the gruesome discovery in Stacy Pannell's dorm room, the Northeast Mississippi Community College campus was shrouded in a pall of disbelief and fear. The police launched an extensive investigation, their efforts casting a wide net in the hunt for clues and suspects. Detectives delved into Stacy's life, interviewing friends, acquaintances, and anyone who had crossed paths with her in the days leading up to her death. The search for clues was exhaustive and relentless, stretching from the corridors of the college to the quiet streets of the surrounding town. The focus initially fell on the male members of the community. Could a jilted lover or a spurned admirer be behind this heinous act? The investigators gathered fingerprints and DNA samples from countless individuals, a daunting task in a community where doors were often left unlocked and trust was freely given. Stacy's current boyfriend, her past relationships, and even casual acquaintances were scrutinized, their alibis checked and rechecked. The detectives left no stone unturned, their inquiries painting a picture of Stacy as a well-liked, sociable young woman, her life tragically cut short in its prime. Despite the thoroughness of the investigation, the leads were frustratingly sparse. The forensic evidence gathered from the crime scene, including the wooden rifle and the bloodstains, yielded no definitive answers. The absence of clear fingerprints or DNA evidence compounded the mystery. The theory of an external assailant was further challenged by the logistics of the crime scene. The cut in the mosquito net, initially thought to be an entry point, now seemed implausibly small and awkwardly positioned. The more the detectives pondered, the more they questioned the feasibility of an outsider navigating the complexities of the dormitory unnoticed. In the days and weeks that followed, the investigation seemed to be mired in uncertainty. The lack of conclusive evidence and clear suspects left the detectives grappling in the dark. Theories were proposed and discarded, leads followed and abandoned. The college campus, once a haven of youthful energy and aspiration, was now gripped by a sense of unease. Students moved in groups, their conversations often hushed and tinged with fear. The shadow of the unsolved crime loomed large, a constant reminder of the fragility of safety and the lurking presence of evil. As the investigation stalled, the question on everyone's mind remained unanswered. Who had taken Stacy Pannell's life, and why? The mystery of her death was not just a puzzle to be solved, but a wound that had scared the community, leaving a mark that would not easily fade. Weeks turned into months, and the investigation into Stacy Pannell's death had hit a dead end. The detectives, grappling with the lack of solid leads, decided to seek the insights of a criminal profiler, hoping to shed new light on the perplexing case. The profiler, a seasoned expert in unraveling the complexities of the criminal mind, delved deep into the details of the case. He studied the crime scene photographs, the autopsy report, and the testimonies of those who knew Stacy. Through this meticulous analysis, he began to construct a psychological portrait of the potential perpetrator. His findings painted a picture of a young male, likely between the ages of 20 and 24, with a strong physical build. This individual, the profiler suggested, had no prior criminal history, pointing to the possibility that the crime was not premeditated, but a result of a sudden violent outburst. The absence of clear defensive wounds on Stacy suggested that the attack was swift and took her by surprise. The profiler theorized that the killer might have been someone Stacy knew and trusted, someone who could approach her without arousing suspicion. This new angle sent ripples through the investigation. The detectives revisited their interviews and evidence, looking for someone who fit the profiler's description. However, the theory seemed to clash with the physical evidence at the scene. The cut mosquito net, the positioning of the body, and the lack of male DNA at the scene made it difficult to reconcile with the idea of a male attacker. The investigators found themselves at a crossroads. On one hand, the profiler's insight provided a new perspective on the case, offering a potential motive and behavior pattern of the killer. On the other hand, the tangible evidence seemed to tell a different story. The campus and the town remained in a state of heightened anxiety. The profile of the killer was circulated, but it did little to ease the fears of the community. Students were more cautious, their once carefree demeanor replaced by a guardedness that spoke volumes of the impact Stacy's death had on their lives. As the days passed, the mystery of Stacy Pannell's death continued to haunt the investigators. The profiler's report, while insightful, had yet to lead to a significant breakthrough. The puzzle of who had taken Stacy's life and why remained unsolved, a dark cloud over the college and the small Mississippi town that had once been a peaceful haven. As the first anniversary of Stacy Pannell's death approached, the case that had once gripped the town of Booneville with fear and speculation had started to fade into a resigned obscurity. The detectives, however, remained haunted by the unsolved mystery, the image of the young, vibrant student whose life had been so cruelly snatched away still vivid in their minds. Then, a year after the tragedy, an unexpected development breathed new life into the stagnant investigation. It came from an unlikely source: Stephanie, the neighbor who had been among the first to discover Stacy's lifeless body. Stephanie, a student who had lived a seemingly normal life in the dormitory, was brought in for another round of questioning. This time, the atmosphere was different. The detectives sensed an unspoken burden in her demeanor, a hidden depth behind her eyes that had not been there before. As the questions unfolded, Stephanie's facade began to crumble. The walls she had built around her secret slowly eroded under the weight of her conscience and the persistent probing of the investigators. And then, in a moment as startling as it was unexpected, Stephanie confessed. She admitted to killing Stacy Pannell. The confession was shocking, almost inconceivable. Stephanie recounted that fateful night, how a heated argument over Stacy's boyfriend had spiraled out of control. Words had turned to physical violence, and in a moment of unchecked rage, Stephanie had grabbed the wooden rifle and struck Stacy. The detectives listened in stunned silence as Stephanie described how panic had set in after the deed. In a desperate attempt to cover up her crime, she had staged the scene to make it look like an outsider was responsible. She had cut the mosquito net, positioned the body, and even attempted to clean up the blood. The revelation sent shockwaves through the investigation team and the community. The narrative of an unknown, malevolent intruder had been shattered, replaced by a far more chilling reality. The killer had been one of their own, a student who had walked the same halls and sat in the same classrooms as Stacy. The confession, however, was just the beginning. As the details of Stephanie's admission began to unravel, so too did the complexity of her motives and state of mind. The case, which had seemed on the verge of a resolution, was about to plunge into new depths of psychological and legal entanglement. Stephanie's confession, once a mere witness in the tragic death of Stacy Pannell, turns the case upside down. Detectives who had been chasing shadows for months were suddenly faced with a new, disturbing reality. As the investigation progressed, however, Stephanie's confession began to blur under scrutiny. She recanted her statement, claiming it was made under duress, the result of psychological manipulation, rather than a genuine admission of guilt. She claimed that the methods used during the interrogation had led her to mistakenly believe that she was responsible for Stacy's death. This stunning turn threw the case into turmoil. Detectives, once confident they had solved the mystery, now faced the possibility of a false confession. Stephanie's attorneys argued that her initial confession was the result of intense pressure and suggestion, rather than proof of her guilt. The controversy surrounding the methods used in the interrogation added fuel to the fire. Experts debated the validity of such techniques, some arguing that they could inspire false memories or elicit false confessions from vulnerable people. Amid this whirlwind of doubt and controversy, the trial began. The prosecution presented the confession as key evidence, while the defense focused on discrediting the methods used to extract it. They argued that Stephanie's mental state, possibly influenced by medication, made her susceptible to suggestion. As the trial progressed, the community remained divided. Some saw Stephanie as a manipulative killer who had finally been exposed, while others saw her as a victim of overzealous law enforcement tactics. The courtroom became a battlefield where the complexities of human psychology, the reliability of memory, and the subtleties of legal ethics were debated and discussed. The main question remained: did Stephanie really kill Stacy, or was her confession the result of a delusion of reason? The trial ended with Stephanie being found guilty of manslaughter. However, this verdict did little to dispel doubt, and controversy. For many, the case of Stacy Pannell's death remained a disturbing mystery, a story of justice and truth, entangled in a web of psychological complexities and legal contradictions. In the wake of Stephanie's conviction, the Northeast Mississippi Community College and the town of Boonville struggled to find closure. The case of Stacy Pannell's death, which had once seemed straightforward, had morphed into a complex tapestry of doubt, guilt, and unresolved questions. Stephanie, now serving her sentence, continued to maintain her innocence. Her conviction, based largely on a confession she claimed was coerced, left a bitter taste. For some, justice appeared to have been served, but for others, the nagging doubts about the validity of her confession lingered. The college campus, which had been a hub of youthful exuberance, now carried the weight of this tragedy. Students and faculty alike were left to grapple with the unsettling reality that the truth might be more elusive than they had thought. The once carefree environment was now tinged with a sense of caution, a reminder of the fragility of trust and the complexities of human nature. In the years that followed, the case occasionally resurfaced in public consciousness, often prompting fresh debates and discussions. Legal experts, psychologists, and criminal investigators continued to use it as a case study in the complexities of interrogation techniques and the psychology of confessions. For the families and friends of Stacy Pannell, the ordeal was a wound that never fully healed. The vibrant young woman they had lost remained a memory frozen in time, her potential and future cruelly snatched away. They were left with a college of memories, a mixture of love, loss, and the haunting question of whether true justice had been achieved. As for the town of Boonville, the case became a part of its history, a somber chapter in its otherwise peaceful existence. The story of Stacy Pannell and the trial of Stephanie was recounted in hushed tones, often with a sense of disbelief at how quickly life can take a turn into the unknown. The legacy of the case lay not just in its legal outcome, but in the lessons it imparted about the complexities of the human psyche, the intricacies of the legal system, and the elusive nature of truth. It served as a reminder that sometimes the shadows of uncertainty can loom larger than the light of clarity, leaving only questions in place of answers.